Hello, everyone. It is I, Elijah Avalon, and welcome back to Mystic Meetings, the place where we talk to spiritual people about spiritual things. And today, our guest is someone that I have loved and followed for many years, and I am so delighted to have here on Mystic Meetings, and that is Aren. It's Aren, right?
Yes, it's Aren.
Aren Forestsong. I keep wanting to say Aren, but that's because I'm country.
That's fair. I mean, it does have like loose ties to the name Aren, so it does make sense.
Okay, well, let's start off with that. So, why that name? Where's that come from?
Oh gosh, I'm trying to remember. It's been so long. So I actually first brought the name when I started my channel again. Because originally I was the Silent Witch, and then I became, because of the rules on Facebook, I became Simon Wyatt because they wouldn't let me put Silent Witch. So then I was Simon Wyatt, the what was it, the Witch in the Shadow, I think.
Okay.
Oh, sorry.
It's okay.
It said that you're calling me.
That I'm calling you?
Yeah,
No such thing.
lies. I know. Oh no, now I'm not back. Where's my face? Face, come to me. There you are.
Okay.
Is it still recording?
Yeah, we're still recording.
Oh, good. This was fun.
Good thing we're not live. Hope I remember to edit this out.
Oh my gosh. Honestly, I would not be upset if you didn't. It'd be really entertaining.
Yeah.
I forgot what I said. Oh, yes. So then I was the Witch in the Shadows, and then I left I left YouTube. I left more witchy YouTube in particular. And then when I came back into the witchy YouTube, I started off as, oh God, what did I say? The Boss Ass Witch. That's right.
I remember.
And oh, lies. No, I started off as the Mormon Mystic. That's right. I started off as the Mormon Mystic, and then I was like, I really liked having that public, mystical, magical name. Not because like I mean, everyone knows I'm also Aiden, but like just for that. I don't know. I just thought it's a nice vibe. It's just a nice vibe to have like a different name, and to like, I guess you could argue that it is a little bit like a persona, but it's like, I don't know. I feel like I'm so transparent that there's not much of a persona left, honestly. But so Aren, I think this was when I was starting to try and get back into, or not get back into, but get into my Ashkenazi Jewish heritage. Because I remember correctly, Aren is Hebrew for Aaron, and or something along the lines of like exalted one, mountain like meaning. And then Forestsong, that's actually tied to my patron because he is a master of the forest and he's also tied to music. So that's why.
Cool.
Yeah.
So, so I told myself I wouldn't say so like 25 times, but I probably will. So, first question I like to start everything off with, every interview. It's the same question. And that is, why witchcraft?
I'm gonna use the same initial response as Crafton. Why not? I mean, honestly, when she said that, I was like, that is the most perfect response. It's like, really, why not? You know, I mean, it really does just make life interesting. It helps you deal with the fuckery of the world. Oh, I hope you don't mind cursing. I just totally just let it out.
It's okay. I can bleep it, so it's
Okay. I'll try and remember from now on so that way you don't have to do too much bleeping.
okay.
Um, but it really helps deal with the any type of like navigation through troubles, problems, to include any type of like social injustices or any type of like severe problems. So it's like it really, you know, it can deal with things as simple as just, oh, I need to pay the bill this month, or dealing with something as like, you know, racial profiling. So like the way and uses of which addressing a problem, it really covers everything, and it really gives you this sense of empowerment when the world makes you feel like you have no power.
Absolutely. That's a great response. I think all four people now that I've interviewed so far for Mystic Meetings have all answered the question with why not?
Yeah.
That's valid. when did you come into the magical space? What was your intro?
What was my intro? Okay, so travel back in time to not good with dates, but I know I was like 13, 14 years old, and go back to me living in Plainfield, New Jersey, in what was my grandma's home that we took over at the time when she passed on. And this would be after 8th grade. So this is the summer of 8th grade. I'm like, so I should be about 14 years old. And, I just, at that time, I thought I was homosexual. I was still finding out my sexual orientation identity to later find out it was actually bisexual. But at that time, as especially as a male, you're very much, you pick one. You're either heterosexual or you're homosexual. There is no, like, if you're bisexual, you're a unicorn. Like, it's a myth. You're just confused, and they will help you, or rather dictate for you which one you are. Um, so at that time, I was still kind of figuring it out, and it's like, okay, this is clear. I'm clearly not heterosexual. That's clearly not in the picture. And so at this time, I was like loosely Christian. I did, have my, I say come to Jesus moments, but it's more like, what would you call it? Like when you try and like pray and get washed spiritually and all that. Not baptism, but it was more like
absolved. Absolved.
I guess yeah, I guess kind of like a I guess like a conversion type of thing, but it's like I never was a different type of, what was that?
Oh, I was gonna say, you said not like being saved or what?
Maybe it is being saved. I can't remember what the word is. It wasn't baptism though, because that was later. But it was this like, I guess it's a come to Jesus moment. I don't know, like where you just come and pray and say, I dedicate my life to you, all that. I did that twice and nothing happened. So, and at that point I was like, okay, this is clearly not working. And so, I was looking in the Bible and I found the passage that talked about, oh, lies. No, I was reading an older version of the King James Bible, the truest word. This is I don't remember exactly what year it was copyrighted, but it had to be sometime after 1946 because that's when the change was enacted. And in there, I realized it says nothing about homosexual. It uses the word effeminate. I'm like, those are most definitely not synonyms. And it was at that point, in a nutshell, I realized, okay, this is not as truthful as it's proclaimed to be. And then I just did a prayer to like, God, whatever you are, I'm very heavily paraphrasing, but I basically made a prayer to the universe saying, put me on a path of truth as it is, not as I see it, not as others see it, but as it is, as you see it, as it is divine, like divine core truth. And one of the first things that came to me was Charmed. It was just like a little vision of Charmed. I'm like, what the fuck kind of response is that? Why are you gonna make me think about, oh, I'm so sorry. Why are you gonna make me think about television? I'm over here being serious. And so then later on, I end up looking it up and I find out that it's actually based on Wicca. And the first YouTube video I ever watched, the first YouTuber I ever saw was actually Tiptoe Chicks Is Wicca Right For You? And that was my introduction to YouTube and to witchcraft, paganism, Wicca, all of it. And other than that, it kind of just goes down and I started trying to learn about it. But it really wasn't until I was like graduating from high school at 19 that I actually really started like being serious and like daily learning, dedication, and practicing. Because I was just too busy with school and other life circumstances. But that's the condensed version of how I got into witchcraft.
Cool. So I'm really trying to stop that, you guys, everyone watching. If you want to play a drinking game, you can drink every time I say so. So it sounds like most of us, you came into your magical journey, into your spiritual awakening through Wicca first. Is that true?
Yes. I was never really, I'm gonna be straight up, I was never really good at really being Wiccan. I was kind of like, I don't know how to explain. So like, I got the books that she recommended in that video, and all those years later, I did finally get the books, and I did try to do it, and I didn't like the balance of the deity expression. I feel like it was supposed to give balance in like a polarity aspect, um, but I didn't like how, oh, only one of the deities lives on and on and on and on, and one dies and is their child, but then also their lover. I'm like, I understand it's supposed to be about incest, but I'm sorry, we're in the modern day. That definitely looks like incest to me, and I'm just not down with that. I mean, honestly, the only components that I have still left of Wicca is the um the very loose altar setup of the god and goddess placements and central unification. That's pretty much it. To include the I've adapted it, but it's the extended version of the Wiccan Read with my adaptations of changing certain words or whatever. And then the Sabbats. That's pretty much all that's been salvaged from Wicca in today's times. But I had a good run. It was the good old college try, I like to say.
Yeah, for me, Wicca was just too straight. And yeah, and too many perceived rules, especially for someone who was coming out of a very heavy Christian upbringing. I did not want any rules or dogma in a spiritual path. Um, so I understand that. Do you think that Wicca and witchcraft are the same thing, or are they different?
Um, I I think are we going off of like the original traditional Wicca or like Wicca as the umbrella term?
We can just say Wicca as an umbrella term for any traditions within it, and witchcraft, any forms of witchcraft, any paths, it doesn't matter. We're going with like basic definitions of each. And these are just, there's no wrong answers. This is just your opinion.
Okay. So I'm gonna say that I guess I'll say that they're similar but still distinctly different. And I think one of the main similarities is the branch offs of both. That's a big component that makes them very similar. There's also a lot of that uh, attunement with the earth. I feel like even if you're an atheist type of witch, you still have that attunement with the earth, at the very least with the herbs and curios and things that you work with in your magical practice. Um, but I also feel like there's a lot of differences because, like, you can be a witch but not Wiccan, but I've also heard that you can be a Wiccan but not a witch, and I'm like, I'm still trying to figure out how that works. I kind of thought that when you're a Wiccan, you automatically were doing like witchcraft things, but I don't know. Then again, I was never really full Wiccan, so maybe there's a part that I didn't know. But yeah, I think that's what I'm gonna say. That like there's very distinct differences, but there's also very distinct similarities. I think with it being an undogma, well, Wicca does have a little bit of dogma, but compared to organized religion, and I know for a time Wicca wasn't accepted by the government as an organized religion. So I feel like comparatively speaking, even with its dogma, it's still very more fluid compared to the mainstream traditional, the original list of organized religions. So I think that's why there's a lot of fluidity, but there's much more fluidity in witchcraft, and I think that's been made manifest and very clear when you see all the various traditions across the globe.
Mm. Uh, Look, I'm from Twilight. I feel like it's like a vampire. Okay, anyway. Um, Something I've noticed uh lately is that everyone says that witchcraft is a practice and not a religion because there are no rules of how to practice or whom to worship or not worship. And they always say that, they being the witchcraft community, they always say that you can be a witch without any workings with deities or entities of any sort. And that confuses me because doesn't that just become folk magic? So is witchcraft folk magic? And do you actually know any witches who don't work with spirits, deities, and entities? Because I don't.
I think traditionally, witchcraft probably would have been originally folk magic. And the reason why is because technically witch was never I can't remember what the word's called. I think it's ethnonym, but that self-proclaimed name that a community will give themselves. Technically, it was a derogatory term used by Abrahamic faith walkers. And through reclamation of the word, we call ourselves witches, but traditionally people like us wouldn't have called ourselves witches. And I think there's also a said origin of it being linked to shamanism, or that shamanic practices were taught to certain people and it was just implemented differently. So I do think that I use a very, very, very broad definition of witchcraft, which ends up encompassing folk magic, even if an individual themselves wouldn't call themselves a witch. And that's just the way that me and the people in my culture, that's just how we view magic and witchcraft. We see it as a very spiritual, magical, earth-based, loose definition and all-encompassing. But as for knowing anyone that doesn't work with any spirits whatsoever, the closest thing that I can think of, and it's not even true anymore, was Samantha Valens. I know she was an atheist witch for a long time, but I think for the past 2 years, I don't remember how long it's been, but I know now she works with Santa Muerte. So I honestly, off the top of my head, no, I don't know anyone else.
Right, right. Like it's just something I've been thinking about a lot lately. You mentioned, how witch was like a derogatory term as it's pagan, right? And how they've been reclaimed, and that those terms were put on us by Abrahamic society. Do you think that the Abrahamic faiths, any of them, are inseparable from iconography and ideology in modern witchcraft?
I think maybe Judaism might be the closest, but Catholicism, most definitely not. They have all forms of statuary. And even Christianity, I feel like now they're trying to deter more from that symbolic representation, whatever. But even they will still have a lot of like art pieces that have that iconography like aspect. But yeah, I think other than maybe the Star of David for Judaism, I think they're probably one of the few people that actually honor one of those commandments of to have no idols or whatever. Just because like I can't think of, and I'm not that deeply into knowing of it, but I can't think of them having any type of statuary or any type of humanoid art pieces that they do. So that might be the closest one to answer. But even they technically, in more of the ancient civilization times, they did, the Bible calls them out on it, fell to paganism and all that. And even when they weren't pagans, they still had their mystic practice. And that's why when you look into the more orthodox, they'll have the Kabbalah as part of that practice in there. So that they still have what me and my people would refer to as like a magical practice. We see that mysticism as just like a variant expression of a magical practice, if that makes any sense.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Do the Abrahamic faiths influence you specifically in your craft?
I want to say yes and no. It's very convoluted because so since the core of my practice is that Bohemian tradition. And if you don't know, the Bohemian are basically I say surviving descendants, but I use that very loosely because the culture it's pretty much dead if we're going to be bluntly honest. But I loosely say the surviving descendants of the Bohemian Romani. And this is not like Bohemian as in what we understand today, Bohemian. This is like they were from the country Bohemia, before it got dissolved into Czechoslovakia and then Czech Republic and Slovakia in like, I think 93 or something like that. Because like with most Roma getting engulfed in that Holocaust era, or what we call Poraimos, or the devouring, at least with the Bohemian culture, there was some Jewish influence that's brought in there. I'm trying to think of like a good example. That I've shared on Instagram some words that I found were corresponding to what we say. There's also I can't remember what it's called in Hebrew, but there's like this little scroll, and you usually hang it in like a little glass tube or some little encasement, and you put it about, it's supposed to be at the 2/3 mark of the door frame, and it's supposed to be like a blessing or protection type of thing. I can't remember what the Hebrew word is called, but we actually have that same type of practice, and that was something picked up during the Holocaust era. We would and instead of a tube, though, we had a railroad spike, and we would wrap it around the railroad spike and bind that up so the parchment wasn't visible, and it would be hung on the inside. And then after, so this is like May 1945-ish, when it was over, this would be after the unaliving of the Mustache Man. This would be now shifting, instead of it being like behind the door of where we were living or under a floorboard, it became behind the door of the Vardo, or the caravan. So that's probably one of the prominent things I can think of off the top of my head. And there's are some practices, but when it comes to like the magical spell casting component, I don't think so. I mean, there is a Svate Sarah Lakalo, or Saint Sarah the Black, that I work with, but that's not really, because she's not seen as like a real canonized saint. I personally don't count it as like Christian Abrahamic inclusion, but I'm also still learning and still decoding what's Jewish, what's French, what's Scottish influence, what's Slavic influence, and then just kind of like piecing it together, because I'm just being taught the culture and the practices, but I personally want to also know the origins. So that might be something that I share more down the road.
Cool. You kind of answered two questions in one there, because my next question was to tell us about your culture, your cultural practice, what it's called. But you kind of just did all of that. So thank you.
Yeah, no problem.
Taking us into a little bit more of like it's serious, but a little bit more of a playful area. Why do you think so many witches are queer? Because it seems like there's a lot of queer witches.
You know, I've been seeing that a lot too. Actually, it seems like it's, until recently, when I came to YouTube, it seemed like it was more queer men and then hetero women, or maybe they were bi women but just were in hetero relationships. But now I'm seeing more like lesbians and bisexual women, and I'm loving it. And also a lot of trans people are coming into this, and I think that's really cool. I'm loving the growing diversity of the witchy community. But as for why, I think it kind of goes back to the why witchcraft question. It really gives you that sense of personal power, and I'm going to stress a healthy sense of control, just so that way we don't get the confusion of, oh, we're being controlling and manipulative. That's not, I personally don't think that's what witchcraft and magic is meant for. But I think that's really why. I think it gets them out of the toxic situation, or it gets them like a toe in on a pathway to get out, as well as not feel ashamed, and to do a lot of the I call it enshadowments, but a lot of y'all know it as shadow work, to do that healing. A lot of it also encourages a lot of science, especially psychology, and the use of not just holistic healing, but sometimes that's not enough. if something's been going unaddressed for long enough, it's going to really start affecting the physical body, and it's going to become a physical issue, not just a spiritual or astral issue. So I think that it's a collective reason. It gives a lot of wiggle room for figuring yourself out, expressing yourself, loving yourself, being who you are, uh, finding an identity, feeling like you have some sort of control and power, even when, like I said, when society makes you feel like you're nothing or that you don't have anything. So I think that's a big reason why.
Yeah. If the witchcraft community, and I do believe it is growing in its queer sub community, and I do, like I say, I do think it is growing. What space does that leave for heterosexual men? Because I think that heterosexual cisgendered men are the minority in the craft community. Do you see a space for them in the future, or do you think it's going to be so dominated by queer people, feminine presenting people, feminine culture, embracing people, that it pushes straight men who cannot embrace femininity out? Does that make sense?
Yes, it actually does make sense. I hope to see that in the future. I think there's going to be a delay in it, though, and solely because I feel like a lot of cis, heteronormative men aren't doing the healing that they need to be doing to be sexually comfortable or to be comfortable in these spaces. That there's a reason why there's a patriarchal rule type of thing going on, and I hate to say it is primarily towards hetero cisgendered men. There's nothing really saying that in those individuals are bad, but collectively there has to be that type of healing work done on their part first, and then there's also going to have to be a healing towards those that don't identify as that by a continual behavioral permanent change and that constant showing of a pattern that you're no longer acting that way. I think in the heart, everybody's going to want to say, oh, yes, let's include everyone. But the trauma in the mind is going to say, but y'all are the ones that casted us out and needed and made us feel like we need to create this space in the first place. So I think it's going to be a very walking on eggshell, bouncing back and forth, very sticky, uncomfortable situation type of thing. But I think it is going to happen because, you see some of it now just in the outside the spiritual community. You'll see men doing a lot more dressing differently and just doing things and really pushing the envelope. So I think that if all is going in a healthy direction, I think that there will be a space. It's actually something I'm looking forward to. It actually reminds me of, I just watched one of Jasmine Ambrosia's videos, and she was talking about, I think it was like one of her live Coven Q&A Coventry info videos, and she was talking about how if you see a need, make something there. And I think that's something that's going to happen, that they're going to see a need for more heteronormative representation. And I'm hoping that it goes in a more positive expression, because a lot of times when people feel the need for heteronormative expression, it usually tends to be very toxic and disrespectful. So yeah, I think that's how I'm going to answer that question.
Okay. Covens, which you just kind of mentioned on the backside there. Covens versus solitary is an eternal debate, and I think it will always be a debate. Where do you stand on solitary versus covens? And should there even be a versus in that statement?
I don't think there should be a versus, because to do so would mean that they're the same experience, or even on subconscious level thinking that they're the same experience, and they're most definitely not. I haven't had a lot of coven experience. I've only had one, and it was very short-lived. It was only, I think, a month or two, and it was an online coven. But then they changed over to wanting to be a personal dues type of thing, and I'm under the belief that a coven is supposed to function like a family or extended family, and your family, or I personally don't believe that you have to pay to be a part of your family. While I do think you should be doing contributory actions that may involve money, I don't think it should be treated like a club with like member dues, paying dues in that regards. So that's kind of where I stand with that. But yeah, I definitely don't think there should be a versus. As when it comes to me, when I first started, I kind of thought I was never going to want to do any type of coven work. And I think it was just because the witchcraft was so new and I was like really enjoying that sense of control and empowerment. And just learning the things and finding my identity, finding my spiritual identity, finding my practice. But then, I started realizing, which is why I ended up doing that online coven, is like, I actually would like to have some type of coven experience. And it's actually ironic that you asked this question, because even today, especially while watching the video, it was brought back to me that, I kind of want to join a coven again, but I want this one to be more of an in-person one. And I don't think I'm ready yet. There's still some things I want to get personally dealt with first. And I'm also in a limbo status right now for a potential move. So, but something I've been thinking about is doing which also kind of piggybacks off of that heteronormative representation thing, is I've been wanting to do a all male coven. Just to kind of have like a safe space for diversity of masculinity. And yeah, I'm gonna leave that there because I don't have it really in the works yet, and it's probably gonna be one of those 3 to 5 year goal things. But yeah, that's brewing in the back of the pot of the noodles.
That's so cool that you say that. I never share my goals with people. Because I'm very much like, don't give me energy at all towards it. But I have a very similar goal in that I want so badly to have, because I've had 2 covens, one that I helped co-found, but I was not a high priest in, and then the second I was the high priest of the coven, and it lasted for years. And now it's been years, because I'm old. Now it's been years since that coven has dissolved and we all just moved away to different parts of the country. And I've been itching to have a coven again, but this time I really would like to have an all-male coven, and dive into like the divine male and like healing your masculinity, breaking society's, agreements that we had to make. Like, there's a whole thing. So that's cool. That just got me so excited. I forgot what my next question was. Yes. Okay. Do you have ritual and ceremony in your personal practice, or is it just like folk magic?
It is primarily folk magic. Even just now, I'm getting ready to do the 28 what it called 28-day witchy challenge.
The witchy 28 days with Jasmine Ambrosia. I have to do my day 3 today. Yeah.
Yes. And honestly, it's really a good timing, because I realized I've been going a long time without, I have like protections. I have certain like individual protections, but I don't have like a universal home protection, which is weird because I've had a spell for it. I just haven't I just haven't used it.
But, I will mark this video not for kids, and hopefully that will help.
But yeah, I picked up the last of the ingredients. I just went out, found a fallen pine branch, got the pine needles I needed from it, and it's gonna be something I'm gonna do soon and post today. But I do ritual. I actually just did some for Imbolc. It was a small ritual, but I feel like my ritual is still kind of on a more simple level. I haven't done cakes and ale in like, I don't even know how long anymore. It's been a while. I just find it unnecessary for me. I don't know. Maybe it's just I don't use enough energy in my rituals. I don't know what it is, but for a while there, I was doing it, and there's definitely a really beautiful grounding component to it. It really brings you into that physical solidarity, rooting back to the present. So there's definitely a beauty to it. But I don't know, maybe I just like the high that I get from the magic in the ritual, that I don't want it to end, so I just don't I don't do the cakes and ale. But I don't know, sometimes I kind of wish I'll do it again. But it's another thing, it's like it's hard to, that was a component that was really hard for me to keep constant, because like when I plan something or think of something, like I kind of go full on, and then it's like when I have it so thought out, it's like it feels perfect, and I don't want it to change. Not that I'm scared to change, but it's like, oh, this is like really good. I want it to stay this way, and then having to like constantly, okay, well now I moved, or now they stopped making those things. Now I have to buy a new one. I'm just don't feel like making it today. So it's like I don't like the inconsistency factor, but yeah, so it's a little both. I do a little bit of ritual, but I also do a lot, mostly type of that connection with the earth, just doing neighborhood walks or nature walks, and it is primarily folk.
As someone who practices what would from the outside be called conjure work, I guess, but that's not really what we would call it here in Alabama. We just call it folk magic. Like, it's not even magic. It's just like folk beliefs. But from the outside, I get that it's very much like hoodoo, conjure, and all that. That's such a inherently folk tradition that all the magic is folk. There really is no ritual and ceremony, really. And if it is, it's very quick and off the hook, on the fly. It's not like, let's set up this. We have rules, and it's not like a 30-minute endeavor. And you can correct me if I'm wrong, but I assume that the Bohème tradition must be very much the same, because it's just a practice that a group of people developed as a folk community, right?
Yes, it is very folk based in the traditions. I can't really think of anything that would really be a ritual, and even if it is, it's kind of like like cooking is a ritual to us, but it's like also like it's part of your day-to-day life. Also, another ritual is cleaning. And while we do spring cleaning, we do it around this Imbolc time. We so that way when full spring is here, like Ostara vernal equinox time, the cleaning's been done, and the rebirth and the energy can come through. And we do that based on like moon phase, or whatever. We'll do certain works based on waning and waxing, but that's probably the extent. The only other thing I could think of that could be possibly perceived as ritual-esque is our I'm drawing a blank of what's called. It's Pomazatink Zvati Pomazatink Lavari, the holy anointing potion. That is a 28-day creation process. So that's probably the biggest ritual thing that we do off the top of my head.
Do you think that ritual and ceremonial magic is more effective or more powerful than folk magic that may happen in a matter of seconds as opposed to X amount of time?
I think it depends on why you're doing the folk magic or ceremonial ritual magic. Because to me, and this is just like the way that my Bohemian magic condition tradition mind works, because we bring everything back to like a practical level, is that the ritual, that ritualistic magic, that ceremonial magic, is something that you would do more for like any type of earthly manifestation. So like for like I've actually thought of something. So like any type of a breaking of curses for like pregnancy, or things like that, things that take a long time to manifest. That's how like I'm thinking of it. And then, but like I just did, I used my Breshin Panari Levari, my rain caller potion, and I just used my dinner plate that I ate off of, and a blue candle, lit that shit, and and then like within like 2-3 days, the manifestation happened. So, I think it really depends on what you're doing the work for.
Yeah, I think it's all intent, and what works for the practitioner works for the practitioner. It doesn't have to be for anyone else. Like magic is not performative, you know.
Absolutely. I definitely agree.
Yeah. I noticed in my Southern traditions, head coverings are very important, particularly during magical work. The healing of other people, the blessings and the blastings too. It's important to always have a head covering. And I wonder if it is for the bohems as well. I notice you have something around your head, so.
Yes, it actually is very traditional for both male and female to wear head coverings. Now, old school original tradition before the Holocaust era, it was actually only women that would wear it. That we were much more tied to like the general Roma community and the way that they functioned, and the way that you originally worked in the Roma community is that the women, specifically married women, would wear it. It was a form of communicating that you were married. You'd wear the diklo, the head covering, and it was to express that. When it's going to get a little dark, but when the Holocaust era happened and family was being split up, and you know different members of families were passing on, that mm, to the modern Western eye sexist type of role play, to us it was never meant like that, but to some modern Westerners it's just a difference in ideology. But when that became what's the word, at risk of being lost, men started picking up a lot more of the traditional female things, at least in the Bohemian practice or in the Bohemian community. And that was because our numbers from the beginning were already, like, we were already only at like 2,000 people before the Holocaust. So like we were already a small community. So it manifested different for us. And so then, men and women started wearing head coverings. And it was a way to be able to show in practice, not just tell the children, oh, once upon a time women wore head coverings. So it was like we're very much about, you know, monkey do, not monkey see, if that makes any sense. So it's like you're gonna see us do the work, you're gonna see us telling the stories, you're gonna see us wearing what we're wearing or whatever. It's not just gonna be us telling you, you're like, it's gonna be leading by example type of thing. So, and then after that words, it kind of just stuck, and then it started really developing um, a spiritual meaning, and that's why we don't even use the word diklo anymore, because diklo really just means handkerchief or headscarf. But we use opona, which comes from more of that Czech word for I think it's actually curtain, and it's supposed to like be reference to the veil, because when we wear this, it symbolizes protection of the crown chakra, but it's also as like a mystical, magical crown, and that mastery and reigning that comes with wearing it, as well as representing the veil between the worlds, as well as in meaning that you master working between the worlds.
I love that. That's so similar to the reasons why we wear them in Southern Conjure. Like, what's funny is that most Southern Conjure has evolved into just wearing a baseball cap. But if you've ever been to the Midwest, I assume too, but if you've ever been to the South, baseball caps are huge. Like, if you don't wear one and you're male, it's like, what's wrong with you?
Yes.
Yeah, originally it was all about straw hats and fishermen's hats, which well, you can't see it, but which I do also have. But I've noticed in the past maybe 40 years, has evolved into like practitioners just wearing a baseball cap that they would wear every day, myself included. Um, but that's cool that with the crown chakra and all that you spoke of, it's the same reasons. So I just think that's really cool. I like finding comparative lines between spiritualities. Uh,
Oh, if I could just add one more thing. So when you mentioned about the transition, it reminded me of like how it's transitioned for us. So a lot of, I'd say within the past 2, 3 generations, it's very short. But wearing hoodies and hooded jackets, that's why you'll often see me wear hoodies. Has become the more modern way of doing it, and this was due to the necessity of being able to, unfortunately, have to say, assimilate and not be noticed. But old school tradition was wearing it like this. Like there was no alteration. You wear the headscarf, but in a need to not be profiled and exposed and recognized, and just being able to be a little more discreet and blended in. It became more common to, even if you did wear one, to have a hoodie on or a hooded jacket. So that way, if, even if you like wearing this, you could still put this on and then no one's really going to see it. You can really pull the hoodie down. And I'll just show you. It's like you can just do it like this. And now it's like it's gone and you're not identifiable anymore. So it's just, yeah, I just wanted to throw that little thing in there because like when you mentioned it, it just really made me think of it.
Cool. Now that we're comparing spiritualities, it's leading me to a lot of questions that I personally have. And this is just a shawl, right? And shawls are a big part of conjure. And I feel like I have to say this disclaimer every video for everyone watching. I'm not speaking about Louisiana conjure. I know that's a very different thing. That's very voodoo influenced. I'm talking about Lower Appalachia and Eastern Ozarks. Okay, we're talking about Deep South Bible Belt conjure. It's not the same thing. So, disclaimer out of the way. Shawls are a big deal, and they used to primarily just be women back in the 1800s or so. But more and more, it became more of just like everybody. It was a way to identify your medicine man in the community. And I've noticed, and I don't think I've ever seen it on paper, but I've noticed that most all two-headed doctors or witch doctors or whatever term you want to call us wear very subtle colors. No one's really running around in bright reds or blues or like nothing's flashy or showy. It's all very much like subtle. And I know that some of that comes from being able to blend in like when you're actually out in the woods. And that was taught to me by my mom and Paul. So I know that that's true. But I do also wonder if it's like you said, a part of like blending in with the community too and not being singled out. Because while as a whole here in the South, being a two-headed doctor is a good thing, or a angel doctor is a good thing, being a moon doctor or a conjure doctor is a bad thing, even though they're the same thing. But one practices blessings only, and the other also does blastings. So, and anyone who is watching, blessings are like good things, blastings are bad things. But anyway, I bring that up because it seems like that's also a through line for us both, is like the assimilation to culture. But what play does color, if at all, play in the Bohem tradition? Is it colorful or is it more muted and subtle?
Honestly, I'm glad you're asking that because as you were talking about that, that was something I wanted to touch upon as well. So we actually are very colorful, but sometimes we have to subdue the color for the sake of avoiding being outed or getting asked inappropriate questions or jokes. It kind of just depends on the person for one, but it also depends on their environmental circumstances, like where are they located, like how high of an exposure is that prejudice, discrimination. Because me being in Southern California, I thought, oh, it'd be pretty fine. But the specific area I am is much more conservative, And so I was getting questions like, "Oh, are you Muslim? Are you?" I've had a lot of people trying to accuse me of being communist, or and like that's a bad thing. But like, I mean, that's just an uneducated opinion trying to perpetuate that Red Scare mentality. But I've also once or twice had someone ask me if I had cancer, and I was like, "Oh, wow, there's just a whole bunch of questions." And I'm just like, and then there's also a lot of touching. This like oh, it's so nice, let me touch. It's like, you don't touch. This is not just a cloth. This is not just this is a spiritual thing. So it's like, and that was a big reason why I started wearing hoodies more, started taking on that, because a good 2 plus, probably a little more into it, good 3-4 years ago, I wasn't wearing hoodies and hooded jackets that much. Even when I would wear the covering, I would do the baseball cap method sometimes, but I'd either wear the headscarf or like a beanie or a baseball cap, depending on like weather or whatever. But here it's just like I needed something quick and that seemed inconspicuous and did not draw attention and the desire to touch, because it's a big no. I'm not sure if it's the same. I'm assuming it's the same because of the spiritual context of it, but it's like very it's spiritual dirty to touch it. Like you're not supposed to touch it. And then it's like, then there's also the whole evil eye type of component, and there's like, okay, now you're like, which is the purpose of wearing it. But it's like, if you're gonna have evil eye cast on it just for having it on, it just, at that point you need to do like multiple cleansings on it, and it's just like, it doesn't matter how many you have, like you're gonna get exhausted having to constantly do that work all the time, plus your 9 to 5 or whatever. So I needed something that was a little, that still could do the work, but also didn't draw as much attention. So, but yeah, my personal preference, I love colors, and I have a few of different colors, and also uh, it's like part modern, part old traditional. It's like one of those in between transitional periods of where like certain days are actually associated with certain colors, and then certain if you're doing dark moon or light moon work, then you also will have different variations of color there. One will be like more of a gray, the other one might be a black or something like that, or maybe you'll use a white and a black, or it just depends.
Cool. Cool. Yeah, the hat thing, like, people are not supposed to just oh gosh, especially come up and just grab it off your head. Oh my gosh. That is definitely frowned upon. But what I find difficult is that, the people before me, my ancestors, decided to go the route of mainstream hat wear, right? Which is fine because it's more easily accessible now, easy to find, easy to buy, easy to customize, easy to blend in with. But because it's easy to blend in with, people will think you're just wearing a hat. So I have been out with people before, and we've been like bowling, for example, and they just ripped it off and put it on their head, like, now I'm wearing your hat. And I'm like, oh, like, why would you do this? And like my my necklace here, my Buckeyes, these are never supposed to be touched by anyone. And if they are going to be touched by someone, it has to be someone of the opposite sex. So I don't even wear these in public. I compromise with an acorn because it's still a nut from a tree. But yeah, so through line there too. Shifting us a little bit because we do have to start winding down. We're towards the end of our interview. This opens up a can of worms potentially, but do you have a presence of Satanism and or demonology or demon work in your practice? Because I think that it's becoming increasingly popular.
I'm assuming when you say demonology, you're talking about like the Goesha or the traditional modern concept of the, demons of hell type of thing.
Right.
Okay. So yes and no. We actually don't use the term demon. This is going to be a little convoluted. So we say daemon, but we're talking about the traditional, because the Roma are like centuries in existence. Like we're talking about 2,000 years of roaming the earth. So there's a lot of like some things that got picked up in like Greece, and one of those was daemon, and that's the origin of the word, and it was the natural middlemen is probably the best way to explain it. It was between God and between man, and these are as we understand them as the umbrella term for nature and land spirits, and we do see nature spirits and land spirits as two different beings. But we do also acknowledge and in very rare circumstances work with what we refer to as fiends, and these would be probably the closest thing to the demons of that most people know about. But the way that we understand a demon is that it is a what's the word, it's like a warped warped soul. It's hard to explain. I forgot what the word is. So we believe all fiends have human origin, and that they have not detached from egocentrism and that egotistical expression. And so then they have, this is where the possession and obsession can come from, and those are two different types of takeover from the fiends. And so they're human-esque, but they're not human spirits because they've been warped through times, a lot of times centuries. So it's very shape-shiftery, and why sometimes you can see animal parts with the human body parts. But that's probably the closest thing to like our demonology, or to what the vast majority of people know as demonology.
Are the fiends inherently negative or evil spirits?
Yes, they are the ones that these would be the people that were like serial killers or rapist, things of that nature. You know, the ones that inappropriate play with children, those type of individuals, and the ones that, you know, want to live forever. Those people, not the ones that just, you know, the ones that are like hyper fixated on living forever and will do anything to do it. You know, the ones that might do like stem cell. I think you get the drift what I'm going with here. So those are like the minor ones, where the major ones would be doing the more unaliving acts.
This is fascinating to me because I keep finding parallels between our traditions, and it makes me wonder if Alabama conjure, Northwest conjure, took a bunch of stuff from the Bohème tradition, or if a Bohème people settled here at some point. Because I mean, seriously, we're having a lot of overlaps here, and I've never, and I'm being completely honest, I'm 34 years old, and I have never talked to someone else in a folk practice that has had this many overlaps with mine. It's kind of freaking me out. We have basically the exact same thing, but we don't call them fiends, we call them haints. And haints can be this is where it's a little different. Haints can be like non-human spirits that are seen as evil or negative, but they also, a person can become a haint when they die. And these are like serial killers, like bad people, or people who are consumed by greed and hate and other sins. That's crazy.
Yeah, it's you know, I wouldn't be too surprised. I mean, as far as I know, by the time anyone would have came to America, because my ba, that's what I refer to her as. It's short for babe, in which that's short for babishka. So babishka is like the real word that means grandmother, and then baba would be like grandma, and then ba would be like mama, nana, all those cutesy names. And so I've recently converted to using the word ba, because when I was saying baba, people thought I was talking about Baba Yaga. So it's like I needed to make sure I was doing a distinction. But Ba is who's like teaching me a lot of this. And I made a promise that I wouldn't like reveal identity or any type of like living situations or life, family, etc. Um, but she is in the U.S. But by the time anyone, like to include her and her family and anyone else who might have been alive, there really was only about like maybe 3 families that would have been able to, that were still alive and practicing, that would have been in America. So I don't know, but I do know that Roma people have a lot of their own folk practices, even if they are Christian or Catholic or whatever. And a lot of them, the vast majority of us collectively, one of the most universal spiritual practices we had was cartomancy, whether if it was playing cards or tarot. And I know that's become a big thing in the magical witchy community. So I think there's a lot of debate on whether it's just influence and crossover or if it's stealing. I don't really know where I stand with that, but it's possible that there was that influence as well.
Cool. Oh man, I think with folk traditions, no matter where they are in the world, where we are right now in a global culture, we're so sensitive and obsessed with the misuse of the word appropriation, cultural appropriation. And as someone who's an academic, this is a very hot topic that maybe I'll make into a video, but cultural appropriation actually does not exist academically speaking. They believe that it does not exist. That's not a thing. Which I know it can rub so many people the wrong way, just me saying that. But that's from an academic standpoint, and maybe I will make a video on that. But yeah, I hear you, and I get what you're saying. That's interesting. I have so many more questions I want to ask you, but we are at the end of our time, so we've got to wrap up. So this is me formally asking you to please come back to Mystic Meetings, please.
Oh, I absolutely will. And we can do like a part 2 with the rest of those questions.
I would love that because I have a lot more. I'm so fascinated with you as a person and with your belief system and your opinions on the whole Neo community. Like, I find you a very interesting individual, so you have to come back.
It's settled. I'm going to come back.
Thank you. Let's wrap up with, oh, I'm so sad. Okay, let's wrap up with a question that I wrap up all my interviews with, and that is, to the young people watching, the little chitlins of the world, who are watching this with or without permission, in secret or not, what advice do you have to them in terms of getting into magic, witchcraft, or the greater occult community?
Okay, I think I can sum that up with 4 things. 1, do some type of goal setting or prayer to the divine. I'm trying to like generalize this. So if you're atheist, then maybe just set it up as a goal. If you're more of the academic scholastic, maybe again a goal. But if you're spiritual, maybe pray to whatever higher power you identify with, or even just a general multiple terms to make it universally collective. Make some type of goal, prayer, petition about a path of truth. That is something from experience. Speaking from experience, it worked very well for me. It leaves me not really questioning much and not feeling like I'm doing something wrong or I need some external validation. So even if it's very different from someone else's, I know that this is just part of that path, part of that answer to that initial prayer and that dedication to truth, first and foremost, before paganism, before Wicca, before Bohemian culture and all that. It was always about truth. So that's the first and foremost thing that you should be doing, or that I highly, strongly recommend for you to do. The next thing would be pick up some form of protection work. Because they're at least in my tradition, we refer to it as like a residue. There's this and anytime you do type of magic or whatever, it leaves this energetic residue that can be traceable by spirits. And so you're going to want to do protection work in the beginning, because you're not going to know how to deal with various spirits. And for the most part, you don't have to be like, oh no, not the spirits. You don't have to be scared of it. But there is that potential for I'm trying not to curse, but for unpleasant experiences to happen with very harmful spirits. It's not always likely, but it's better to have a good protection set and never stop learning about protection. So that's my second thing. Third thing, find, and I guess we can end it at 3 because it can be a combination practice. Do some form of like meditation and divination work. That is your great way of spiritual communication. So with protection and with that divination and meditation, always keep on learning new ways of doing that, because you're going to find that certain divinations work with certain spirits, certain deities, to include your inner spirits, or animal spirits or whatever. So that's pretty much my tips, because that's what I did, and it's worked very well with me, and it's going to help steer you in a direction that may go against the grain of society, in some ways that might even be not acceptable in the witchy community. But if you've made it about truth, and if that's your wholesome heart, then you should be good at the end of the day.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Don't feel like you got to fit into any one box or be with the mainstream. If you look at the older videos on my channel, I'm trying very hard to be like a witch and present things in a Eurocentric way, focus on, the gods and all of this. And it was just so not me. And I was trying very, very hard. And it's only in the past year that I've just been like, you know what? I practice Southern Conjure. If you think that that's racist or inappropriate or appropriation, talk to me about it. Otherwise, this is what I was raised with by my mom and pa. So I'm going to honor my family and our traditions. It is what it is. Anywho, follow your hearts. Listen to your hearts. Don't question your hearts. Because they know the way. And as long as you are living honestly, I think people will understand. And if they don't, just let them go. Lastly, plug yourself. Where can people find you?
Okay, so you can find me on Instagram, Facebook, Snapchat, and obviously YouTube. Oh, and TikTok. I always forget about TikTok. um, but and for the most part, it's going to be either Aren Forestsong, or it's going to be the Bougie Mystic. I'm trying to remember. I think it's TikTok. I guess the Bougie Mystic was taken, so I did the Bougie Mystic 369. But for the most part, I keep the same profile picture. So if you see the picture, it's me. I do have a schedule. I'm planning on doing, like, I don't know, some type of picture post pin somewhere. I don't know. But usually Sundays is TikTok. I'll do like a weekly divination reading. Tuesdays, I'll either go live or post on Instagram. And Wednesdays, I'll post or go live on YouTube. And Friday, I'll post or go live on Facebook. That's usually the general thing. I try to make it the same time, roughly like 4:15, 4:30 p.m., give or take. For Instagram, though, I am doing this daily 28-day witchy challenge, so you will see more posts than usual. But yeah, that's where you can find me.
Awesome. And all those links will be down below. So look on down there and follow. Follow everybody. Do all the things. Click the things. Thank you so much for being here. I appreciate you so much. Thank you, thank you, thank you.
Oh, thank you for having me. It was so much fun. I love doing these. I kind of wish that more people did them more often, but I love doing them so, so much. So thank you.
Yes, me too. I love it. I love it. Because I think when we get to know each other, when we actually talk to each other, that's how we learn and how we grow as people, regardless of whether we're witches or not. Communication is everything. So, thank you, everybody. And you know where to look, you know where to follow. Thank you so much. And goodbye.